Injured eagle approaches man for help. Their journey will leave you speechless. How will this story escalate? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The small town of Willow Creek was nestled at the edge of a sprawling forest, where the chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves created a serene melody every morning. One quiet autumn evening, a man named Daniel, a retired wildlife rehabilitator, was preparing to lock up his modest cabin when he noticed something unusual in the fading light. At first, he thought it was a trick of the shadows, but as he squinted, he could see the silhouette of a large bird on his porch rail. It was an eagle, its majestic wings folded awkwardly, one of them hanging lower than the other. Its piercing golden eyes locked onto his, and it didn't flinch or fly away as he approached. Instead, it let out a soft, almost pleading cry. Daniel's heart raced. He had spent decades working with injured wildlife, but never had a creature as proud and untamed as an eagle come to him voluntarily. He moved slowly, speaking in soothing tones. "It's okay, big guy. I'm here to help." The eagle, sensing no immediate threat, stayed still. Daniel noticed blood on its feathers and a deep gash on its wing. He retrieved a thick leather glove and some basic medical supplies, all the while keeping an eye on the bird. He knew one wrong move could provoke its talons or beak. As he carefully approached, the eagle remained calm, as if it understood his intentions. Daniel gently wrapped a towel around the bird to immobilize it before examining the injury more closely. The wing was indeed broken, likely from a collision or a fall. The gash, though not life-threatening, needed immediate attention. He cleaned the wound, applied an antiseptic, and wrapped it with a bandage. The eagle winced but didn't struggle. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" Daniel murmured, amazed at the bird's resilience. He set up a temporary enclosure in his workshop, a space he used to care for injured animals during his working years. As he placed the eagle inside, he couldn't help but marvel at its beauty. Its feathers were a mix of rich brown and shimmering gold, and its sharp beak hinted at a predator's strength. But now, it looked vulnerable, its proud gaze softened by exhaustion. The next morning, Daniel called the nearest wildlife sanctuary, but they informed him they were at capacity and couldn't take the eagle in. "It'll take weeks to heal," they said. "You're its best chance." Daniel hesitated. He had retired to escape the emotional toll of his work, but he couldn't turn his back on the creature that had come to him for help. "All right," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "We'll figure this out together." He named the eagle Valor, inspired by its courageous approach to a human for help. Over the next few days, Daniel focused on gaining Valor's trust. He spoke to the bird often, recounting stories of his time as a rehabilitator and sharing his quiet moments of reflection. Though Valor couldn't respond, its calm demeanor suggested it was listening. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel adjusted his routine to accommodate his unexpected guest. He prepared a diet of fish and small game, ensuring Valor received the nutrients needed for recovery. He monitored the healing process closely, changing the bandages and gently exercising the uninjured wing to maintain its strength. Valor, in turn, showed signs of growing trust. It would stretch its wings cautiously, its sharp eyes tracking Daniel's movements with a mix of curiosity and understanding. Sometimes, Daniel would find the eagle perched on the edge of its enclosure, as if contemplating the world beyond. One crisp morning, Daniel decided it was time to test Valor's flight. He carried the eagle to a clearing near the forest, where the ground was soft and the space wide open. Valor stood tall on Daniel's gloved arm, its wings spreading tentatively as it felt the wind. "All right, buddy," Daniel said softly. "Show me what you've got." Valor launched itself into the air, its powerful wings beating against the wind. For a moment, it seemed to soar effortlessly, but then it faltered, landing clumsily a few feet away. Daniel rushed to its side, checking for any signs of pain or further injury. "You're not ready yet," he said gently, "but you'll get there." Back at the cabin, Daniel began designing a rehabilitation plan tailored to Valor's needs. He built a small aviary in his backyard, giving the eagle more space to practice flying. Each day, Valor grew stronger, its movements more confident and fluid. Daniel felt a deep sense of fulfillment watching its progress, a reminder of why he had dedicated his life to helping animals. One evening, as they sat on the porch together, Daniel looked at Valor and said, "You're teaching me, too, about resilience, about trust, about never giving up." The eagle tilted its head, as if acknowledging his words. The days stretched into weeks, and Valor's progress became the center of Daniel's life. Each morning, the eagle greeted him with a sharp, piercing cry, almost as if demanding their daily routine to begin. The bond between them had grown, an unspoken understanding forming as they navigated this journey together. Daniel's mornings started early, with him preparing fresh fish for Valor's meals. He had taken to visiting the nearby river, fishing patiently to ensure the eagle had a natural diet. Valor, perched on a makeshift roost near the cabin, observed him with intense focus, its piercing eyes a testament to its indomitable spirit. One particular morning, as Daniel prepared Valor's meal, he noticed something extraordinary. The eagle, with its still healing wing, hopped down from its perch and began pacing toward him. Its movements were deliberate, the injured wing tucked close to its body. Daniel froze, unsure if Valor was testing its boundaries or seeking his company. "Are you inspecting my work?" Daniel chuckled, setting the fish down. Valor let out a soft cry and stretched its good wing wide, as if to acknowledge the effort. "You're quite the character," Daniel said, smiling. As the eagle ate, Daniel sat on the porch, sipping his coffee. He couldn't help but marvel at how this majestic creature had chosen him of all people. There was something almost sacred about the trust Valor had placed in him. It reminded Daniel of the many animals he had rehabilitated over the years, each one teaching him lessons about life, perseverance, and the bond between humans and nature. The next phase of Valor's rehabilitation began with longer flight exercises. Daniel had constructed a series of wooden perches at varying heights in the aviary, allowing Valor to practice hopping and gliding. At first, the eagle was hesitant, its movements cautious as it tested the strength of its injured wing. But with each attempt, its confidence grew. Daniel watched with pride as Valor took to the air within the aviary, its wings slicing through the wind with increasing precision. "That's it, buddy," he cheered, clapping his hands. Valor responded with a triumphant cry, its powerful presence filling the space. These moments were not without setbacks. Some days, Valor struggled, its landings awkward and unsteady. Daniel was always there, offering words of encouragement and ensuring the eagle felt safe. "Progress isn't always a straight line," he said one evening, sitting beside the enclosure. "But you're getting there, and that's what matters." One crisp afternoon, Daniel decided it was time for Valor to experience the open skies again. He carried the eagle to the clearing near the forest, a place that had become their sanctuary. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting golden hues on the grass. "All right, Valor," Daniel said, his voice steady. "This is your moment." He extended his arm, and Valor stepped onto his gloved hand. The eagle spread its wings wide, the span breathtaking against the backdrop of the forest. Daniel could feel the strength in its grip, the determination radiating from its form. With a powerful thrust, Valor launched into the air. Daniel held his breath as the eagle soared higher, its movements fluid and confident. For the first time, it didn't falter. Instead, it glided gracefully, the wind carrying it effortlessly across the clearing. Daniel watched in awe, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Valor circled above, its cries echoing through the forest. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to their shared journey of healing and trust. As Valor landed gracefully back on Daniel's arm, he could see the fire in its eyes, the pride in its stance. "You did it," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "You're ready." But Daniel knew that this was only the beginning. Valor's place was in the wild, soaring freely as nature intended. The thought of saying goodbye weighed heavily on his heart, but he knew it was the right thing to do. "Not yet," he murmured, stroking the eagle's feathers. But soon, that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel sat on the porch with Valor perched beside him. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the beauty of the moment bittersweet. "You've given me more than I ever expected," Daniel said softly. "You reminded me of who I am, of what really matters." Valor tilted its head, its sharp eyes glimmering in the fading light. It was as if the eagle understood, its presence a silent reassurance. Over the next few weeks, Daniel prepared for Valor's release. He scouted the forest, finding an ideal location far from human interference. He wanted to ensure the eagle had everything it needed to thrive: ample food sources, safe nesting areas, and the freedom to roam. As the day of release approached, Daniel found himself torn between joy and sorrow. He had grown accustomed to Valor's presence. The rhythm of their days intertwined in a way that brought him a sense of purpose. But he knew that keeping the eagle longer than necessary would be selfish. Valor was meant to soar, to reclaim its place in the wild. The night before the release, Daniel sat with Valor one last time. The eagle, as if sensing the significance of the moment, stayed unusually still, its gaze fixed on him. "You've got this," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're stronger than you know." The bond they had forged was unlike anything Daniel had experienced. It was a connection that transcended words, rooted in trust and mutual respect. As he watched the stars twinkle above, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for Valor, for the journey they had shared, and for the lessons he had learned along the way. The morning of Valor's release arrived with a crisp chill in the air. The sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the forest. Daniel prepared in silence, his mind racing with emotions. He had been through this process many times before, rehabilitating injured animals and returning them to the wild, but this time felt different. Valor wasn't just another animal. It was a companion, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder of his life's work. He loaded the enclosure into the back of his truck, making sure Valor was comfortable for the journey. As the eagle sat calmly inside, its eyes scanned the surroundings, as if already aware of what was to come. Daniel drove to the spot he had scouted days before, a clearing at the edge of a vast stretch of untouched wilderness. The journey was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of Valor shifting inside the enclosure. When they arrived, the clearing was bathed in soft sunlight, the sounds of the forest alive with birdsong and the rustling of leaves. Daniel opened the back of the truck and carefully lifted the enclosure out, placing it in the center of the clearing. Valor stood still, its posture regal, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. "This is it," Daniel said softly, kneeling in front of the enclosure. "This is your world now." He opened the door slowly, stepping back to give Valor space. The eagle hesitated for a moment, its sharp eyes locking onto Daniel's. It was as if it understood the weight of the goodbye, the significance of the journey they had shared. Then, with a powerful beat of its wings, Valor stepped forward and launched into the air. Daniel watched, his heart pounding as the eagle soared higher and higher. Its wings cut through the air with precision, the sunlight catching the golden tips of its feathers. Valor circled the clearing once, its cries echoing through the trees, before disappearing into the horizon. For a long moment, Daniel stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the empty sky. The silence that followed was heavy, a mix of pride and loss settling over him. He knew this was how it had to be, but that didn't make it any easier. As he packed up the enclosure and prepared to leave, Daniel couldn't help but feel the absence of Valor's presence. The drive back to the cabin was quiet, the familiar sights of the forest passing by in a blur. When he arrived home, the space felt emptier, the routines they had shared now replaced by stillness. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel tried to adjust to life without Valor. He spent his mornings tending to the garden, his afternoons fishing by the river, and his evenings on the porch, gazing at the stars. But no matter how much time passed, the memory of Valor lingered. He often found himself looking toward the sky, hoping for a glimpse of the eagle he had come to care for so deeply. One evening, as Daniel sat on the porch sipping tea, he heard a familiar sound, a sharp, piercing cry that sent shivers down his spine. He stood up quickly, scanning the treetops. And there, silhouetted against the twilight sky, was Valor. The eagle circled above the cabin, its wings cutting through the air with effortless grace. Daniel's heart swelled as he watched it descend, landing on the same porch rail where their journey had begun. "Valor," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The eagle tilted its head, its golden eyes meeting his. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the connection between them as strong as ever. Daniel approached slowly, his hand outstretched. Valor let out a soft cry, stepping closer as if to greet him. "You're back," Daniel said, his voice filled with awe and emotion. He wasn't sure why Valor had returned. Perhaps to say goodbye one last time, or maybe to show its gratitude. Whatever the reason, Daniel was overwhelmed with a sense of joy and closure. He spent the evening sitting with Valor, recounting stories of their time together and reflecting on the bond they had shared. The eagle listened quietly, its presence a comfort in the stillness of the night. As the stars filled the sky, Daniel felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that Valor was free but still connected to him in some way. The next morning, Valor was gone, leaving only a few feathers behind as a reminder of its visit. Daniel kept those feathers on his mantle, a symbol of their extraordinary journey. Though the eagle had returned to the wild, its impact on Daniel's life was lasting. He felt inspired, rejuvenated, and more connected to the natural world than ever before. In the weeks that followed, Daniel found himself drawn to the forest, spending more time exploring its beauty and observing the wildlife. He began volunteering at a local wildlife sanctuary, sharing his knowledge and helping others understand the importance of protecting the creatures that shared their world. One afternoon, while leading a group of volunteers through the forest, Daniel spotted a pair of eagles soaring high above the treetops. He smiled, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Though he couldn't be certain, he liked to believe that one of them was Valor, thriving in the freedom it had fought so hard to reclaim. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice carried away by the wind. In that moment, he felt a profound connection to the world around him, a reminder that every life, no matter how small, had the power to make a difference. Months passed since Valor's triumphant return to the wild. The forest, which had always been a source of peace for Daniel, now seemed to hum with a renewed vibrancy. Every rustling leaf, every chirp of a bird, carried a reminder of the eagle he had nursed back to health. Though he hadn't seen Valor again since that twilight visit, Daniel felt its presence in the spirit of the wilderness. One morning, while Daniel was tending to his garden, he noticed something unusual. A flock of crows was circling low over the eastern side of the forest, their caws sharp and frantic. It wasn't uncommon for crows to gather in this way, but their persistent cries piqued his curiosity. Slinging a bag over his shoulder and grabbing his walking stick, Daniel decided to investigate. The forest was alive with the sound of the crows, their cries guiding him deeper into the woods. Daniel's footsteps were deliberate, his eyes scanning the canopy above for any signs of trouble. As he reached a clearing, the source of the commotion became clear. A young eagle, its feathers a mix of soft brown and streaks of white, was perched precariously on a low branch, surrounded by the aggressive crows. The young bird flapped its wings in a panicked attempt to ward off the attackers, but its efforts seemed futile. Without hesitation, Daniel clapped his hands and shouted, startling the crows. They scattered, their black shapes disappearing into the treetops. The young eagle remained frozen, its golden eyes wide with fear. Daniel approached slowly, speaking in a calm, soothing tone. "It's okay, little one. I'm not here to hurt you." He crouched a few feet away, observing the bird's condition. Its left wing hung awkwardly, a clear sign of injury. The sight tugged at Daniel's heart, reminding him of the first time he had encountered Valor. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small cloth, offering it to the eagle as a gesture of peace. The bird hesitated but didn't move away. "You're a brave one," Daniel said, inching closer. "Let me help you." It took time and patience, but Daniel managed to gently wrap the bird in the cloth and cradle it in his arms. The eagle didn't struggle, as if sensing his intentions. Daniel carried it back to his cabin, his mind already racing with thoughts of how to care for this new arrival. When they reached the cabin, Daniel carefully placed the young eagle on a soft bed of straw in the corner of the room. He inspected the injured wing, his experience guiding him through the process. "You've got a bit of a fight ahead of you," he said, his voice gentle. "But don't worry, you're in good hands." Over the next few days, Daniel poured his energy into nursing the young eagle back to health. He prepared a mixture of food rich in nutrients, ensuring the bird regained its strength. He treated its wing with care, wrapping it securely and monitoring its progress. The eagle, though initially wary, began to trust him, its sharp eyes watching his every move. Daniel found himself talking to the bird often, sharing stories of valor and the lessons he had learned. "You remind me of someone," he said one evening, sitting by the fire with the eagle resting nearby. Strong, determined, and full of spirit. As the days turned into weeks, the eagle began to show signs of improvement. Its appetite grew, and it started testing its wings, flapping them cautiously. Daniel built a small enclosure outside, allowing the bird to experience the fresh air and sunlight while keeping it safe from predators. He named the eagle Hope, a symbol of the resilience and courage it embodied. One afternoon, as Daniel was working in the garden, a familiar cry echoed through the forest. He looked up to see a magnificent sight, Valor soaring above the trees, its golden feathers glinting in the sunlight. His heart raced as he watched the eagle descend, landing gracefully on the porch railing. "Valor," Daniel said, a smile spreading across his face. "You came back." Valor let out a series of sharp cries, its eyes flickering toward the enclosure where Hope was resting. It didn't take long for Daniel to realize what was happening. Valor had likely been keeping an eye on the young eagle from a distance, ensuring its safety. Perhaps it even knew that Daniel was the only person who could help. "You're incredible," Daniel whispered, marveling at the bond between the two birds. Over the next few days, Valor stayed close to the cabin, often perching on a nearby tree or flying low over the enclosure. It was as if the older eagle was mentoring the younger one, guiding it through its recovery. Hope's progress was remarkable. Under Daniel's care and with Valor's presence nearby, the young eagle grew stronger each day. It began practicing short flights within the enclosure, its confidence building with each attempt. Daniel watched with pride, knowing the day of Hope's release was drawing near. The morning of the release was bittersweet. Daniel carried Hope to the same clearing where he had released Valor months earlier. This time, Valor was there too, perched on a high branch, as if to witness the moment. Daniel opened the enclosure, stepping back to give Hope space. The young eagle hesitated, looking back at Daniel one last time before taking flight. Its wings beat powerfully against the air, lifting it higher and higher. Valor joined it in the sky, the two eagles circling the clearing together before disappearing into the horizon. Daniel stood in the clearing, his heart full of emotion. He knew that Hope was ready to face the wild, guided by the strength and wisdom of Valor. The bond between the two birds and the role he had played in their journey was a reminder of the beauty and interconnectedness of life. As he walked back to the cabin, Daniel felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had not only helped two incredible creatures, but had also deepened his own connection to the natural world. The forest, with all its challenges and wonders, had become a place of healing and hope for both the animals and himself. In the days that followed, Daniel continued his work, caring for the land and its inhabitants. And though Valor and Hope were now part of the wild, their presence lingered in his heart, a testament to the power of resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond between humans and nature. As the days passed, the forest seemed to hum with a deeper sense of harmony. Daniel's cabin, nestled among the towering trees, became a sanctuary not just for him, but for the wildlife around him. Birds would perch on his porch, rabbits scurried near his garden, and occasionally, a deer would wander close, grazing peacefully. It was as if the forest had acknowledged him as one of its own, a guardian who respected and nurtured its inhabitants. One crisp morning, as the sun filtered through the dense canopy, Daniel found himself drawn to the eastern ridge. It was a place he often visited, a vantage point offering a panoramic view of the forest below. With a thermos of coffee in hand and his walking stick for support, he made his way up the familiar path. The climb was invigorating, the cool air filling his lungs and the sounds of nature accompanying him with every step. When he reached the ridge, the sight took his breath away. The forest stretched endlessly, a sea of green interspersed with golden hues of autumn. But what caught his eye wasn't the scenery. It was a pair of eagles soaring gracefully in the distance. Daniel's heart swelled as he recognized them. Valor and Hope, flying together in perfect synchrony. Their movements were a dance of freedom and strength, a testament to the journey they had shared. He watched in awe as they circled above the ridge, their cries echoing in the crisp morning air. "They're incredible, aren't they?" a voice said from behind him. Startled, Daniel turned to see a woman standing a few feet away, a camera slung around her neck. She had an air of curiosity and warmth, her eyes reflecting the same wonder he felt. "They are," Daniel replied, his voice tinged with pride. "I had a part in their journey. The older one, Valor, was injured a while back. And the younger one, Hope, I nursed them back to health." The woman's eyes widened with interest. "You're the one people in town talk about," she said. "The man who has a way with animals." Daniel chuckled softly. "I don't know about that. I just do what feels right." The woman introduced herself as Mia, a wildlife photographer who had recently moved to the area. She explained her fascination with eagles and how she had been trying to capture them on film for weeks. "They're majestic creatures," Mia said, her gaze fixed on the eagles. "And it sounds like you've had quite the journey with them." Daniel nodded, sharing bits of his story with her. He spoke about the first time he had encountered Valor, the challenges of nursing a wild bird, and the unexpected arrival of Hope. Mia listened intently, her admiration evident. As the eagles disappeared into the horizon, Daniel and Mia descended the ridge together. Their conversation flowed easily, a shared appreciation for nature bridging the gap between strangers. By the time they reached the cabin, Daniel had invited her in for a cup of coffee. Inside, Mia marveled at the simplicity and warmth of Daniel's home. The walls were adorned with sketches and photographs of wildlife, a reflection of his deep connection to the forest. As they sipped their coffee, Mia shared her own journey, how she had left behind the chaos of city life to pursue her passion for photography and conservation. "You've built something beautiful here," Mia said, gesturing to the cabin and the surrounding forest. "It's rare to find someone so in tune with nature." Daniel smiled, humbled by her words. "It's the forest that's taught me. Every creature, every tree, they all have a story. You just have to listen." Over the next few weeks, Mia became a regular visitor to Daniel's cabin. Together, they explored the forest, her camera capturing moments of beauty and resilience. She documented the wildlife, from the playful squirrels in the garden to the majestic deer grazing by the stream. But her favorite subjects remained the eagles. One afternoon, as they sat by the creek, Mia showed Daniel a series of photographs she had taken. One image, in particular, stood out. Valor and Hope perched side by side on a tree, their feathers illuminated by the golden light of sunset. "It's perfect," Daniel said, his voice filled with awe. "You've captured their spirit." Mia beamed, grateful for his encouragement. "I want to use these photographs to raise awareness," she said, "to show people the beauty of the wild and the importance of protecting it." Daniel nodded, his heart aligned with her vision. "If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." Their collaboration blossomed, blending Mia's artistic eye with Daniel's deep knowledge of the forest. They hosted small gatherings at the cabin, inviting locals and visitors to learn about wildlife conservation. Mia's photographs, paired with Daniel's stories, left a lasting impact on everyone who attended. As winter approached, the forest transformed into a wonderland of snow and stillness. Daniel prepared his cabin for the colder months, gathering firewood and ensuring his garden was protected. Mia continued her work, often braving the cold to capture the beauty of the season. One frosty morning, as Daniel stepped outside to check on the garden, he noticed a familiar shape on the horizon. It was Valor, its golden feathers shimmering against the pale sky. But this time, the eagle wasn't alone. It was accompanied by two smaller eagles, their movements hesitant but full of promise. Daniel's heart swelled as he realized what he was witnessing. Hope had started its own family. The sight filled him with a sense of fulfillment, a reminder that his efforts had created a ripple effect in the natural world. Mia arrived later that day, her camera in tow. Together, they watched the eagles from the porch, their breath visible in the crisp air. "This is incredible," Mia said, snapping a series of photographs. "A legacy in flight." Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on the sky. "They've come full circle." The arrival of Hope's family brought new energy to the forest. Daniel and Mia spent hours observing the young eagles, documenting their growth and interactions. The locals, inspired by their work, began taking a more active role in preserving the forest. Small initiatives like planting trees and creating safe spaces for wildlife flourished. One evening, as Daniel and Mia sat by the fire, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You've changed the way I see the world," she said. "Your connection to this place, to these creatures. It's inspired me in ways I can't even explain." Daniel smiled, humbled by her words. "And you've reminded me of the power of storytelling," he said. "Through your photographs, you've given these stories a voice." Their partnership grew stronger, fueled by a shared purpose. Together, they became stewards of the forest, working to protect its beauty and ensure its stories were never forgotten. As the winter snow melted and the forest began to bloom again, Daniel reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the day he first found Valor, injured and vulnerable, to the moment Hope spread its wings and soared into the wild. Every step had been a lesson in resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond between humans and nature. Spring brought renewal to the forest, a time when the earth seemed to awaken from its long slumber. The once snowy paths now bustled with life. Tiny buds peeked out from the trees, streams babbled louder with melted snow, and birds sang their songs with renewed vigor. Daniel's cabin, surrounded by this lively symphony, remained a tranquil refuge. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Daniel sat on his porch with a cup of steaming tea. The air was crisp, and the scent of blooming wildflowers wafted through the gentle breeze. He had barely taken a sip when he heard the unmistakable cry of an eagle. Looking up, he saw Valor perched on a nearby tree, its sharp gaze fixed on him. Its cry, urgent and commanding, made him set his tea down and rise to his feet. Valor swooped down, its massive wings cutting through the air with a sense of purpose. It didn't land but hovered close, as if beckoning him to follow. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed his walking stick and followed the eagle, its flight path leading him deeper into the forest. The terrain became rugged, the trees denser, but Daniel trusted Valor's guidance. His heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and concern. After what felt like an hour, they reached a clearing. There, lying near a fallen tree, was a young deer. Its leg was trapped beneath a heavy branch, and its movements were weak, each one a struggle against the weight. Daniel's breath caught as he realized how dire the situation was. The deer's soft cries of pain tugged at his heart. He knelt beside the deer, speaking to it in soothing tones as he assessed the situation. The branch was heavy, and freeing the deer wouldn't be easy. He looked up at Valor, who perched nearby, watching intently as if ensuring Daniel knew the urgency. With every ounce of strength, Daniel pushed against the branch, using his walking stick as leverage. It took several attempts, his muscles straining and sweat dripping down his brow, but he finally managed to shift the branch enough for the deer to pull its leg free. The deer limped a few steps before collapsing, its energy spent. Daniel quickly examined its leg, relieved to find that while it was bruised and swollen, no bones seemed broken. He wrapped the leg with a makeshift bandage, using strips torn from his shirt. All the while, Valor remained close, its presence a silent reassurance. Once the deer was stable, Daniel knew he couldn't leave it alone. It needed rest and care, and the cabin was too far. Instead, he decided to build a temporary shelter nearby. Gathering branches, leaves, and moss, he created a small enclosure that would shield the deer from predators and the elements. The process took hours, But when he finished, he felt a sense of accomplishment. The deer, now resting in the shelter, looked at him with eyes full of trust, a moment that reminded him of the bond he had built with Valor and Hope. As night fell, Daniel lit a small fire to keep the area illuminated and warm. He sat beside the deer, feeding it water from his flask and whispering words of comfort. Valor perched on a tree above, its silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. The night was long, but Daniel didn't mind. He had learned that nature's rhythms required patience and presence. By dawn, the deer seemed stronger, its breathing steady and its eyes brighter. Daniel knew it would recover, given time and care. Over the next few days, Daniel visited the clearing daily, bringing food and ensuring the deer's leg healed properly. The forest seemed to embrace this act of compassion, its creatures watching from a distance as if acknowledging his efforts. Squirrels chattered in the trees, and birds sang melodious tunes, their presence a constant reminder of the interconnectedness of life. Mia, who had been away on a photography assignment, returned to find Daniel at the clearing. She listened in awe as he recounted the events, her camera capturing the serene moments between him and the deer. "You never cease to amaze me," Mia said, lowering her camera. "Your connection to this place. It's extraordinary." Daniel chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "I think it's the forest that has a way of teaching us, if we're willing to listen." Mia nodded, her eyes scanning the clearing. "I want to share this story," she said, "not just with photographs, but with words. People need to know about the beauty and resilience of nature, and the role we can play in preserving it." Together, they crafted a narrative, combining Mia's stunning images with Daniel's heartfelt words. The story, published in a regional magazine, quickly gained attention. It inspired readers to take action, from planting native trees to supporting wildlife conservation efforts. As the weeks turned into months, the deer, now fully healed, returned to its herd. The sight of it running freely through the forest filled Daniel's heart with joy. He knew the bond they had formed would remain, a silent understanding between man and nature. Valor and Hope continued to visit Daniel's cabin, their presence a reminder of the journey they had shared. And while life in the forest followed its natural course, Daniel found himself embracing a new chapter. With Mia by his side, they expanded their efforts, hosting workshops and creating a small sanctuary for injured and orphaned wildlife. The cabin, once a solitary refuge, became a beacon of hope, a place where humans and nature coexisted harmoniously. Locals and travelers alike came to learn from Daniel, their lives touched by his wisdom and kindness. One evening, as Daniel and Mia sat on the porch, watching the sunset, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder if the forest chose you?" she asked. "To be its guardian?" Daniel smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I think the forest chooses all of us," he said. "We just have to decide if we're willing to answer its call." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the forest seemed to hum with a deeper sense of harmony. And in that moment, Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here, for the connections he had formed, and for the promise of what lay ahead. Months passed, and Daniel's cabin became a sanctuary not just for animals, but also for people seeking solace in the simplicity of the forest. The story of his bond with Valor, Hope, and the deer had spread far beyond the region, reaching conservationists, wildlife enthusiasts, and even families searching for a meaningful retreat from the chaos of modern life. The cabin, once a solitary refuge, was now alive with activity. Children from nearby towns visited on weekends, their laughter echoing through the woods as they learned about the animals and the ecosystem. Daniel and Mia had expanded their efforts, converting an old barn into a small wildlife rehabilitation center where injured animals could recover before being released back into the wild. One morning, as Daniel stepped outside to gather firewood, he noticed a group of people approaching the cabin. Among them was a young girl holding a camera, her eyes wide with wonder as she spotted Valor perched on a branch. The girl's parents introduced themselves as environmental journalists, eager to document the unique bond Daniel shared with the forest. "This place feels like something out of a storybook," the mother said, her voice tinged with awe. How did it all begin? Daniel chuckled, gesturing toward the porch. It's a long story, he said, inviting them to sit. As the morning sun bathed the forest in golden light, Daniel recounted the journey that had brought him here, from his first encounter with Valor to the countless lessons the forest had taught him. Mia joined them with cups of herbal tea, her presence adding warmth to the conversation. As Daniel spoke, the journalists listened intently, their notebooks filling with details. The young girl, meanwhile, snapped photos of the surroundings, her excitement palpable. "What do you hope people will take away from this?" the father asked, his pen poised above the paper. Daniel paused, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. "I hope they'll see that nature isn't separate from us," he said. "We're a part of it. And when we take the time to connect with it, to care for it, we find something deeper, something that changes us." The story, published in a national magazine, sparked a wave of interest in conservation and sustainable living. Donations poured in for the rehabilitation center, allowing Daniel and Mia to expand their efforts further. They hired a small team of volunteers, each passionate about preserving the delicate balance of the forest. Among the new arrivals was a retired veterinarian named Clara. Her expertise proved invaluable, and her gentle demeanor quickly won the trust of the animals. "This place is a dream come true," she told Daniel one afternoon as they worked together to care for an injured fox. "I've spent my whole career helping animals, but here, it feels different, feels right." As the center grew, so did its impact. Schools organized field trips, giving children the chance to witness firsthand the beauty and resilience of nature. Artists and writers found inspiration among the trees, their works reflecting the magic of the forest. And families, once disconnected from the natural world, rediscovered the joy of simply being present. One particularly memorable evening, Daniel and Mia hosted a community gathering at the cabin. The clearing was adorned with strings of lights, and tables were set with homemade food. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of pink and purple, locals and visitors came together to celebrate the bonds they had formed, with each other and with the forest. Amid the laughter and music, a young boy approached Daniel, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Is it true you can talk to animals?" he asked, clutching a small notebook. Daniel smiled, kneeling to meet the boy's gaze. "Not in words," he said, "but if you listen closely, they'll tell you what they need." The boy nodded solemnly, as if absorbing a profound truth. "I want to learn," he said. "Can you teach me?" Daniel's heart swelled with gratitude. "Of course," he said. "The forest is the best teacher there is." As the night deepened, Daniel and Mia stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the lights flicker like fireflies. Valor soared above, its silhouette stark against the starlit sky, while Hope rested near the bonfire, basking in the warmth. "This is what it's all about," Mia said, her voice soft with emotion. "Bringing people together, reminding them of what really matters." Daniel nodded, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's more than I ever imagined," he said, "and it's only the beginning." In the months that followed, the cabin continued to thrive as a sanctuary for both people and animals. Daniel's bond with the forest deepened, each day bringing new challenges and rewards. He spent hours walking the trails, his footsteps guided by the rhythms of nature. He learned to read the signs, the rustle of leaves, the calls of birds, the subtle changes in the air. One afternoon, as he sat by the stream, he spotted something unusual. A small bird with a broken wing struggled to stay afloat in the current. Without hesitation, Daniel waded into the water, scooping the bird into his hands. Its tiny body trembled, but its eyes held a spark of determination. Back at the cabin, Daniel carefully tended to the bird, crafting a splint for its wing and providing it with food and shelter. He named it Whisper, a nod to the quiet strength it exuded. Over the weeks, Whisper grew stronger, its wing healing under Daniel's care. When the day came to release it, Daniel felt a pang of sadness but also a deep sense of fulfillment. As Whisper took flight, joining a flock that circled above, Daniel felt a familiar warmth spread through him. It was the same feeling he had experienced with Valor, Hope, and the deer. A reminder that every life, no matter how small, mattered. The years rolled by, and the cabin became a beacon of hope and harmony. Daniel, now a revered figure in the community, continued to share his wisdom with all who visited. Mia's photographs and writings captured the essence of their journey, inspiring countless others to embrace the beauty of the natural world. And while the forest remained ever-changing, it also remained constant, a place of refuge, renewal, and connection. For Daniel, it was home in every sense of the word. As he stood on the porch one crisp autumn morning, watching the leaves dance in the wind, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey that had begun with a single eagle's cry had led to something far greater, a legacy of love, compassion, and unity. And as the sun rose higher, casting its golden light over the forest, Daniel smiled, knowing that the story was far from over. It was, as always, just the beginning.